When I came home from the gym, I heard my fiancé's whisper, "He's gone. You can come out." The closet door creaked open, and out stepped my. The day started ordinary enough. Bench presses, a long shower, the hum of the gym's fluorescent lights still in my head. I drove home early because I'd forgotten my charger. The sky was dull and gray, and the air felt heavy, like it knew something I didn't. My phone buzzed with Nadine's usual text, "Love you. See you soon," sent an hour ago. It almost made me smile. Almost. When I parked in the driveway, I noticed something strange. The curtain in our bedroom window moved. Just a flicker, a quick pull to the side. Our dog wasn't home. I'd taken him to my sister's the night before. So who was that? The house was quiet when I entered. Too quiet. I dropped my gym bag by the couch and walked toward the bedroom, hearing faint movement, soft feet, then silence. I thought maybe Nadine was working on one of her design projects. But then I heard her voice. A whisper, low and sharp. "He's gone. You can come out." My pulse stopped. My hands felt suddenly cold. The door of the bedroom closet creaked open, and out stepped Darren, her boss. He looked pale, sweaty, clutching his shirt in one hand. He froze when he saw me. I didn't shout. I didn't even blink. I just stared at him, standing there in his socks, wearing my hoodie. The first thing that hit me wasn't rage. It was disbelief. That this man, who had dinner at our table 3 weeks ago, who shook my hand and thanked me for supporting her creative career, was standing half-dressed in my home. Nadine's face went white. She started saying something fast, something about a misunderstanding, about how Darren's wife called, and he had to hide because it would look bad. But that excuse collapsed the moment I saw my car keys dangling from his hand. I walked over and held out my hand. He hesitated, then gave them to me. The leather keychain had my initials on it. "You used my car?" I said, not raising my voice, not looking away. He didn't answer. Nadine stammered that she let him borrow it for errands. I could smell wine in the air, see lipstick stains on one of the glasses by the bed. The sheets were still wrinkled. My towel was on the floor. Nothing about this was accidental. Darren tried to speak, but I cut him off with a quiet, steady tone. I told him to leave. He did, without even putting on his shoes. He practically ran out of the house, tripping over the welcome mat. When the front door shut, Nadine finally broke. She started crying, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that Darren had shown up uninvited, that he'd been drinking, that she panicked. The words came too easily, too rehearsed. While she talked, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message preview flashed. "See you at the cabin. 7 p.m. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I walked out of the room. She followed me through the hall, still trying to explain, but I didn't turn back. I picked up my bag, walked out, and shut the door behind me. The drive to the lake cabin took an hour. We used to go there on weekends, back when things were good. I'd built half the furniture there myself. When I arrived, I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway, but the porch light was on. Inside, the air smelled of perfume and burnt candles. 2 half-empty wine glasses stood on the counter beside an open bottle. One of my sweatshirts hung on the chair. There was a blanket on the couch, folded neatly, like someone had planned to come back. I walked to the bedroom and found the bed made, but the sheets still warm. On the nightstand lay a printed photo, Nadine and Darren together at a restaurant I didn't recognize. The weird part? It wasn't a selfie. It was taken from a distance, like someone was watching them. I checked the cabin door again. No sign of forced entry. Someone had keys. For the first time that day, I sat down. The silence pressed on me until it felt like a sound of its own. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calculating. Then, outside, headlights flashed through the window. I moved to the porch. It wasn't Darren's car. A man got out. A familiar face from old pictures. Tyler, Nadine's ex. He looked nervous, glancing around before spotting me. He hesitated, then said he needed to talk. I let him in. He said Darren wasn't who I thought he was. That Darren had been blackmailing Nadine for months using private videos she'd made years ago. That Nadine told him she was trapped, and Darren had threatened to send everything to her clients unless she kept seeing him. I listened, but didn't interrupt. Something about his story didn't sit right. Then Tyler said something that turned the whole thing upside down. He'd been blackmailed too. Years ago by Nadine. He pulled up an old text thread on his phone. Messages from her number, demanding money in exchange for not sending certain photos to his fiancée at the time. His voice shook as he spoke. He said Nadine had ruined his engagement and that he came tonight because Darren called him earlier, saying Caleb deserved to know the truth. It hit me all at once. This wasn't some messy love triangle. It was a pattern. Nadine had been running the same manipulation for years. Each time, she picked someone new, created a situation, then used guilt or fear to control them. Darren wasn't the first. I wasn't the only. Tyler said Darren had found out about her past and started turning the game on her. That she'd been scrambling to keep both sides quiet. He handed me an envelope Darren gave him, photos, bank receipts, proof that money had been wired from my joint account to an account under Nadine's name with a different last name. He told me Darren wanted me to see it, to make her confess before she did something worse. Then he left, saying, "Be careful. She's not who you think she is." I stayed at the cabin until morning, staring at the lake while the world went gray again. I thought about every moment with her, the fake smiles, the sudden spending, the night she said she was working late. The puzzle pieces finally aligned, sharp enough to cut. When I drove back home, her car was gone. So was half her stuff. But the bed was made, the kitchen spotless, like she'd cleaned the evidence out of guilt or habit. A letter sat on the counter. It wasn't an apology, it was an instruction. She said she needed time to think, and that I shouldn't tell anyone about Darren or what I saw, because it would ruin both of us. That sentence told me everything. She wasn't sorry. She was scared of being exposed. So I picked up her phone from the charger she'd left behind and scrolled through the messages. One caught my eye, sent to a contact saved as T. It read, "He came home early. I think he knows. If you don't fix this, we both go down." That was when I realized Tyler wasn't her ex anymore. He was still part of it. Maybe both men were. Maybe all of us were just different chapters in the same con. But if she thought I was going to disappear quietly, she was wrong. I locked the door, packed my own bag, and looked one last time at the closet, the same one Darren stepped out of. The air in that room still felt tainted, as if the lie hadn't left yet. I whispered to myself, not in anger, but in resolve. Tomorrow night, I'd confront her. Not to forgive, not to understand, to end it. The next morning, the world felt different. It wasn't grief or heartbreak. It was a sharp kind of focus, like I'd finally woken up inside my own house after sleepwalking for years. I drove back to the cabin, this time with purpose. On the way, I stopped at a diner off Highway 13, the kind of place where the same few people sat every morning staring into black coffee. I ordered nothing. I just sat there, letting my phone screen light up the booth. Nadine had sent 5 new messages since dawn. "We need to talk. You don't understand. Please don't go to the police." That last one confirmed it. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about exposure. When I reached the cabin again, the front door was wide open. My heart started pounding, not from fear, but from curiosity. Inside, someone had already been there. Drawers were pulled open. The framed photo of Nadine and me from 2 summers ago was smashed on the floor. Her car keys lay on the counter beside the broken wine bottle. It didn't feel like a robbery. It felt like panic. Then I heard a sound out back. Through the window, I saw Darren. His shirt was untucked, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When I stepped outside, he flinched but didn't run. He told me Nadine had called him last night, threatening to destroy his career if he didn't fix things. She still had the files, he said, the videos, the bank proofs, the emails from when he'd first helped her fake invoices. She'd kept everything. He wanted my help. That was the strangest part. This man, who'd been hiding in my closet 12 hours earlier, now begging me to team up against her. I didn't agree, but I didn't refuse either. I let him talk. The more he spoke, the more cracks showed. He admitted Nadine had tricked him into opening an account under his company's name. He signed it because she said it was a client transfer. He thought it was harmless, until money from my joint savings started appearing there. I asked him how much. He said around $48,000. That number hit me like a punch. It wasn't just betrayal now, it was theft. I told him to leave, to disappear, and that if he ever contacted me again, I'd make sure his name was on every report. He didn't argue. He just muttered something about Nadine being a professional liar and drove away, tires spitting gravel. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mess. Then I saw it, a flash drive wedged between 2 placemats. I plugged it into my laptop, and a single folder appeared, labeled Keep Safe. Inside were screenshots, transactions, and photos of me, of Darren, of Tyler. Each file was labeled with dates and names, as if she'd cataloged every person she'd used. One video was different. It was footage from my house. The angle was from the corner of the living room, pointed toward the hallway. I pressed play. It showed Nadine standing by the door, whispering into her phone. "He's gone. You can come out." Then Darren stepped into frame. They kissed, quickly, nervously. She told him to hurry before he comes back. I closed the laptop. My chest felt hollow. She had filmed everything, either as insurance or as leverage. Maybe both. I didn't want to call the police yet. I didn't want to hand over my own humiliation as evidence. I needed a clean strike, not a slow legal process. So I waited until evening, then texted her, "Dinner. Tomorrow. Our place. No more games." No response for 2 hours. Then finally, "Okay." The next day, I worked through every small motion like it was a play. I went to work, treated clients, laughed at small jokes, then came home early and cleaned the table where I confront her. The normality almost felt sickening. At 6:45 p.m., headlights glowed through the curtains. She came in wearing a calm mask, pretending nothing had happened. I offered her wine. She didn't take it. She said she wanted to explain everything. I told her to go ahead. What came next was absurd. She claimed she'd been testing Darren, pretending to cheat to expose him for harassment. That the texts were out of context. That Tyler was lying because he still wanted her. That the transfers were temporary loans. It was all nonsense. Her words tripped over themselves, desperate, rehearsed. I let her talk until she ran out of lies. Then I told her I'd seen the flash drive. She froze. For the first time that day, I saw fear instead of strategy. She tried to grab my phone, but I stepped back and told her about the dinner reservation. I said she should come. There'd be people there who deserved to hear her truth too. Her expression flickered between defiance and panic. She agreed anyway, maybe thinking she could talk her way through it like before. Before she left, she said quietly, "If you do this, you'll regret it." I didn't answer. I just told her to wear something nice. That night, I drove to meet Tyler. I told him everything, even showed him the flash drive. He wanted to go to the police, but I had another idea. I wanted her to see everyone she'd deceived, together. No lies left, no private escape route. Just her, surrounded by the trail she created. Tyler agreed, reluctantly. He said Darren had texted him too, probably out of fear. So we invited him to the dinner as well. The next evening, I called ahead and booked the private room at Starlight Terrace, a rooftop restaurant with mirrored walls and security cameras everywhere. It was the place Nadine had always wanted to celebrate our engagement. When I arrived, the waiter set out 4 places. Darren and Tyler showed up 10 minutes apart, neither making eye contact with the other. I told them to stay calm and let me handle it. At 7:32, Nadine walked in. White dress, red lipstick, like she was stepping onto a stage. She saw us and froze halfway through the doorway. That was the moment, the exact second, everything she'd built started to collapse. She didn't move. Her fingers tightened around her purse. Tyler looked away first. Darren took a sip of water. I just leaned back, quiet, letting the silence eat her alive. Finally, she spoke, calm at first, then shaking. She said this was a setup, that we were conspiring against her, that none of it was real. But when I placed the flash drive on the table and pressed play on my phone, the footage filled the room. Her whisper, the kiss, the words that started it all. No one said anything after that. Her lips trembled. Then she threw the glass at the wall, grabbed her purse, and stormed out, screaming that we'd destroyed her life. No one followed. I sat there a long time after she was gone, watching the city lights blink against the mirrored glass. I wasn't sure what came next, but for the first time in weeks, I finally felt something close to peace. Tomorrow would bring the consequences, and I was ready for them. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds like nothing had happened. But the world had already shifted. The dinner wasn't closure, it was ignition. The match had been struck. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating all day. Tyler texted that Nadine showed up at his place after leaving the restaurant, screaming that he set her up. Darren's office had called, too. Apparently, his wife found out everything overnight. Screenshots of the footage had started spreading among her coworkers. Nadine's name was out there now, tied to both men, and the story was unraveling faster than I expected. By noon, she texted me a single line, "We need to talk privately. Just you and me." I agreed. Not because I wanted to hear her out, but because I wanted it to end face to face. We met that evening at the same lake cabin where all this had started. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She arrived late, in jeans and a hoodie this time, her hair tied back. No lipstick, no mask. She looked tired, but not broken. The first thing she said was that I'd humiliated her, that I'd made her look like a monster, that I didn't understand what it was like to fight for stability in a world that never gave her one. Then she told me something that twisted my gut. Darren wasn't the only one with something to lose. Apparently, she'd been handling money transfers for several clients, illegally. She'd forged invoices using my company name as cover because I had good credit and no debt. Darren knew. Tyler helped once before, and she thought she could keep all 3 of us quiet. When I caught her, she panicked and tried to keep the illusion alive long enough to fix things. It wasn't about love or revenge. It was control. She paced the cabin, voice trembling but eyes sharp. "You think you exposed me," she said. "But you exposed yourself, too. Those accounts were under your business. If I go down, you go down." I didn't answer right away. She wasn't wrong. Her fingerprints might be all over the paperwork, but my name was on the forms. That was when she smiled, small, victorious, as if she'd found a way to win again. I stood and walked toward the table, pretending to think it over. Then I picked up my phone and turned it toward her. The call had been recording from the start. The smile vanished. For the first time, She looked truly cornered. Her voice cracked, asking what I wanted. I said I didn't want anything. I just wanted her to stop pretending. She sank into the chair and covered her face, whispering that she never meant for it to go this far. But her tears didn't match her tone. It was still an act, another performance for a camera she couldn't see. Then headlights flashed outside the window. 2 cars. I didn't invite anyone. The door opened, and Darren stepped in, followed by his wife. She looked composed, like she'd rehearsed this moment. In her hand, she held a folder thick with papers. She said she'd spoken with Tyler and my lawyer, and that she was done letting Nadine manipulate everyone. She placed the folder on the table. Inside were printouts of every fraudulent transfer linked to Nadine's design firm. It was all there, account numbers, wire confirmations, and contracts with my forged signature. Nadine's face drained of color. She lunged for the folder, but I caught her wrist midair. She tried to pull away, her voice breaking into pure fury. She accused everyone, me, Darren, his wife, of conspiring against her. Then she did something none of us expected. She grabbed the wine bottle from the counter and threw it at the wall. It shattered, spraying glass and red wine across the wood. The sound echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. Darren's wife didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, saying only, "She's threatening people again." Nadine froze. The word again hung in the air. Darren turned to me, face pale. He said this wasn't the first time. 2 years earlier, before Nadine ever met me, she'd been arrested in another state for fraud and extortion. His wife found out through a private investigator after the affair started. They'd agreed to keep it quiet to protect his career, but now that she'd dragged us all into it, the silence was over. I looked at Nadine, waiting for denial. But she didn't deny it. She just whispered, "You weren't supposed to know." The police arrived within 15 minutes. She tried to act calm, claiming we were fighting over business, but the officers saw the broken glass and the panic in everyone's eyes. They separated us immediately. One of them, Officer Henson, asked me to explain. I handed him my phone with the recording. When Nadine realized what I'd given them, she laughed, a sharp, wild sound. She told the officer I trapped her, that I'd been abusive, that she was acting in self-defense. It was chaos. Her words, my words, Darren trying to talk, his wife cutting in. Then something shifted. The second officer came back inside, holding Nadine's purse. Inside, they'd found a USB drive and a passport under a different name. The officer asked her about it. She said she didn't know. They didn't believe her. She started yelling, saying the drive was mine, that I planted it, that Darren was framing her. But by then, she'd already said too much. The officer opened the drive on his laptop. It was filled with contracts under different identities, all signed with the same handwriting. She went quiet, completely quiet. When they escorted her out, she turned once toward me. Her eyes didn't hold anger anymore, just a strange kind of exhaustion. Like she'd been pretending for so long she didn't remember who she was pretending to be. The cabin felt hollow after they left. Darren sat in silence. His wife gathered the papers and handed them to me, saying her lawyer would send copies. She apologized, not for him, but for everything that had spilled into my life. Then they left too. I stayed until night swallowed the lake again. The reflection of the flashing red lights faded from the water, leaving only ripples and the smell of broken wine. When I finally drove home, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Tyler. She texted me before they took her. Said if anything happens, check under the floorboard in her office. I didn't reply. I didn't want to keep chasing her ghosts. But as I sat in my driveway, the thought wouldn't leave me. Nadine had planned everything with precision. Every secret had a backup plan. If she left something behind, it wasn't accidental. Still, I went inside, locked the doors, and tried to sleep. Around midnight, I heard something, a faint knock at the back door. I thought maybe it was the wind. Then another. When I looked through the peephole, no one was there. Only an envelope taped to the glass. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No words, just a photograph, one taken from inside the cabin earlier that night. Me, standing at the table, holding the flash drive. Someone else had been there, watching. And for the first time since it all began, I realized Nadine might not have been the only one playing a game. The photograph haunted me all night. Someone had been close enough to the cabin to take it, yet none of us noticed. The idea of another layer, someone behind all of this, felt almost absurd, but the evidence was right there in my hands. The photo wasn't grainy or rushed. It was deliberate, framed, focused. By morning, I made myself believe it was just one of Nadine's old tricks. Maybe she had set up another hidden camera before the police took her. Maybe it was meant to keep me on edge even after she was gone. That illusion lasted until noon. A black SUV pulled up outside my clinic. I recognized the driver immediately, Tyler. He looked frantic. He came straight inside without knocking, clutching a folder. He said he found something in Nadine's old office, under the floorboard just like she'd told him. Inside the folder were several envelopes, all marked with initials. One had his. Another had mine. Another said DW, Darren's initials. Each envelope contained photos, bank printouts, and voice memos, enough dirt to destroy each of us in a different way. She had recorded private arguments, financial statements, everything. It was her safety net, her weapon if anyone ever turned on her. But the strangest thing wasn't what she kept. It was how she labeled everything. Each name was followed by a number. Tyler's envelope said 2, Darren's said 3, mine said 4. What about number 1? I asked him. He shrugged. There wasn't one. Maybe she started counting later. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said something that made the back of my neck tighten. When I found these, he said, a woman was already there. Said she was Nadine's sister. She tried to take the box before I could. I didn't even know Nadine had family. Neither did I. She always said she was an only child. Tyler described the woman. Tall, blonde, sharp voice, early 30s. I'd never seen her. He said she drove away fast once he threatened to call the cops. But she left a note taped to the box. You should have stayed quiet, Caleb. Hearing my name in someone else's handwriting made my stomach twist. Whoever she was, she knew who I was, and that meant Nadine had talked about me. I called Officer Henson, the one who'd handled Nadine's arrest. He told me she was being transferred for processing and would face several fraud charges across state lines. He also mentioned something else. A visitor had come to see her that morning and left angry when denied entry. The name she gave at the desk? Sabrina Vale. Not a sister. A partner. According to the officer, Sabrina's name showed up on 2 of the forged business documents. She wasn't a victim. She was an accomplice. I hung up and told Tyler to stay at a hotel for a few days, somewhere quiet. He agreed and left, looking more shaken than before. I sat at my desk and opened the envelope with my name again. Inside, at the bottom, was a receipt from 3 weeks ago, a wire transfer to an unknown account. The sender wasn't Nadine. It was S. Vale. And the amount? $48,000. The exact sum Darren said had vanished. It hit me then that Nadine hadn't stolen everything for herself. She'd been funneling the money to Sabrina. Maybe it was part of a bigger operation, maybe a shared scheme. Either way, Nadine wasn't just a manipulative fiancée. She was a cog in something larger. But whatever organization or partnership existed between them, it was now falling apart. And I was standing right in the middle of its collapse. That night, I heard glass shatter downstairs. By the time I grabbed a flashlight, whoever it was had already gone. The back door was open, the air freezing cold. A drawer in the living room was pulled halfway out. My files were scattered across the floor. Nothing of real value was missing, just the photograph. The one from the cabin. It was gone. At that moment, everything clicked. Whoever took it hadn't been some stranger. It had been Sabrina. She must have been at the cabin that night, watching from the woods. Maybe she'd been trying to retrieve the flash drive. Maybe she was looking for Nadine's insurance material. And now that Nadine was in custody, she wanted to erase anything that tied them together. I didn't call the police. There was no proof she'd been in my house. No cameras, no witness, just the bitter certainty that I'd been right all along. Nadine wasn't alone. Instead, I did something colder. I drove to the cabin one last time. When I arrived, police tape still crossed the porch. The silence there was almost peaceful again. Inside, I searched the corners, the drawers, everything. I wanted to see what she'd left behind. What evidence of herself she'd failed to destroy. Under the rug by the bed, I found it. One last flash drive. No label. I took it home and opened it on my laptop. There was only one video file inside, dated a month before the engagement. The footage showed Nadine sitting in front of a mirror, speaking directly to the camera. Her tone was calm, deliberate. If you're watching this, she said, it means one of us lost. But it's never really over. The story keeps repeating. Someone always replaces the last one. She smiled slightly, adjusted her hair, and looked past the camera. A voice off screen, female, familiar, said, good. Now do it again, slower. It was Sabrina. They'd been documenting everything from the start, every con, every lie, every man. Each mark had been part of a long-running game they played together. I was just the latest chapter. I watched until the end. Nadine leaned closer to the camera, her voice soft. You won't forget me, Caleb. None of you ever do. Then the screen went black. The next day, I sent everything, the flash drive, the receipts, the documents, to Officer Henson. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted distance. He called me later that week. They'd traced Sabrina's car to the state border, but lost her. Nadine had stopped cooperating once she learned her partner had fled. The case was expanding beyond what I wanted to be part of. He asked if I wanted to press additional charges for the break-in. I said no. Instead, I sold the house, packed what little I cared to keep, and moved into a smaller apartment near the coast. Something about the salt air felt cleaner. A month later, I received one last letter, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed the lake cabin at dawn, the water perfectly still. Standing at the edge of the dock was a figure with her back turned. Even from behind, I knew it was Nadine. Scrawled beneath it in red ink were 3 words. Not her idea. I burned it without reading it again. Whatever story still lingered between them, between Nadine and Sabrina, it wasn't mine anymore. I'd spent too long untangling a life that wasn't real, too long chasing truth from people who only spoke in manipulation and mirrors. So I stopped. I opened a new clinic in a different town, changed my number, erased every photo from the old days. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the faint creak of a closet door in my head, that first sound that started it all. It doesn't scare me anymore. It just reminds me how far I'll go next time to never let someone like her walk out of it again.